Morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Don't have our usual Wi-Fi, huh?
Wi-Fi here?
Well, we usually get there's an overlock Wi-Fi, but it's not on.
Oh, I got connected.
I got connected.
I don't see it.
Oh, no.
That's shared on VIP.
VIP, yeah, that's why I jumped on.
But they're supposed to make one called an overlock or something like that.
I got one shared meeting room.
Up either.
There's one called shared meeting room.
Yeah, shared VIP, I jumped right on.
Well, that's because we got the password because they forgot one time to set us up.
Last time, yeah, that's the name I remembered it.
Okay. Just why my laptop remembers it, but.
Opportunistic Wi-Fi connections.
Better signal strength on the VIP.
Digital signage looks pretty good too, but I have a feeling that's going to be enough rooted nowhere.
Now, the fact that it exactly mirrors the VIP means it's just a different SSID on the same AP.
Yeah, I haven't found out if I'm woke up enough to be sociable.
So are we streaming now?
Trying to.
Saw you sent out a link.
Yeah, that was deprecated. I deleted it.
morning.
Good morning.
Everybody's so quiet.
Is there Wi-Fi?
Showed
Yeah.
VIP, but I don't know what the damn password is.
Shared on VIP, and I cannot remember what they told us password
The
was.
password's the same, but all in lowercase. Sheraton VIP, password Sheraton VIP.
Come on, Raylan.
How are you? Good. Do you have everything? Do you have everything you need to connect?
I think so. It's just HDMI, if this just goes right to that, it should be fine.
Yep. You mind if we test it real quick?
Let me clear off.
Sure. Let's go for it.
Works. It's split screen, yeah.
Do you have any PowerPoint that you want?
Yeah.
Do you have any videos?
No, but I'll be doing some stuff on the web.
Okay. Do you need audio at all?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. So, audio ports on that side.
Yeah.
I'm connected VIP, but no access.
You successfully got connected.
What's your volume level at? If you turn it on.
I don't have access to anything.
Somebody here said it might, that's might be all lowercase, no below.
Do I have anything you'd like to test? If I have to crank up, if I have to plug and crank up the volume, I'll be fine.
Sounds good. You're all set. Would you like the microphone?
Yeah. Shared VIP.
Russia.
That's- Whenever you're ready.
Like a few opening, just like announcements and whatnot.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's staying warm. Let's see, John. So I guess we'll just get right into it. Are you ready?
Let's see how well LibreOffice works. Hey, look at that.
All right.
Got it, you want.
Thanks, man.
We got 3 minutes before 10. Give it just a minute.
Sure.
Are we actually on YouTube at this point?
Yeah.
just in time. So in preparation for this, one of the things I did is I actually gave this talk to the kids at the Virginia Tech Lab as well, a couple weeks ago. And I gotta say, the way that they use Linux and the way that we do is pretty stark. Fedora is not a very popular distro among them. Most of them are using Arch, and most of them are also using window managers like i3 that are tiling window managers, where you don't so much open up a new window as you take the window you have and you split it into two.
Oh,
And-
okay. Oh.
And it's just a completely different way of thinking about it. And you know, when it comes to dealing with all this stuff here, I mean, this grew up with us, and they're more and more growing up with it. So they just have a different way of looking at the entire thing. And it kind of, it's really interesting to see how the industry is going to be changing just by looking at how they've been working with Linux themselves. And then you start to go from that to thinking back to, well, how did we get here in the first place? And the various ages that we've had that we can look back on. I keep thinking about space age, and when people talk about space age technology, they're talking about the 1960s. they're talking about 60s and 70s. The 80s started to become the computer age, and then late 90s and 2000s we got into, I guess we started calling it the information age. And I think we've actually moved one step beyond that now, and we're effectively in the cloud age at this point, where we've taken all that information, we've put it up, and we don't really keep it ourselves. Someone else keeps it for us, and that's hopefully that graphic will live. I see it here. So yeah, we've become a cloud society where we carry our data with us every day on our phones and on our laptops, and probably the most boring things you have, although not if you ask your security officer, are your photos, emails, and contacts, because we've got a whole lot of other things on our phones that we carry with us every day, and just the ability to communicate with people. There it goes. We live in because of that we can live in this kind of work from wherever. We need documents from the office. Well, we've got them. We've got them on either on our laptop, or we can connect through a VPN, or we can get them through some kind of a cloud service that our companies subscribe to. We use instant messaging to communicate with our team members, regardless of where they live anymore. I've been able to leverage that, and I've moved back to Blacksburg, Virginia, because it's just, in my opinion, a more pleasant place to live, and I can still work with all the same people that I work with up here. So why not? Always, it was the internet that made it possible, and there's a DevOps talk that I'm putting together as well, where I talk about how DevOps is only possible now because we've got all the tools that we've been building up for the last 30 years. From Makefiles and on up.
Is this blank screen because we're in the cloud?
Well, there's still a title.
There it is.
We started with just email, making it possible for us to carry stuff on laptops and whatnot. And we even did some document management with that. We might set up a special inbox or a special mailbox on our mail accounts and mail ourselves a document just so we would have it with us. And it worked, but it was kind of a clumsy way to do it. From that, we kind of moved up to being able to use file servers over VPNs. And so, as long as we could actively connect to the network, then we could actually get whatever we needed, or at least whatever was up on the file server.
The network shared from hell.
It was slow, especially with the connectivity we had back then. My phone will do 3 megabits pretty consistently, and I don't have a particularly fast connection on my phone, but it's still a hell of a lot better than what I had as dial-up in the early 90s, where 56K was blazing. Eventually SaaS services stepped up. Probably the first one that really we all got addicted on like it was heroin was Dropbox. Being able to just copy something into a particular file folder on our laptops or our desktops, and then it shows up on any other device we have subscribed to the same. That was huge. Apple was quick to jump on that and set up their iCloud stuff, and they just started putting everything that you had into it. And now it's to the point where if you manage Macs for an enterprise, it keeps getting in the way. You're not, as a security officer, I don't want to have all of our presentations and our proposals and any client data up on iCloud. And yet, every time there's an update to Apple's OS, the first thing that it says is, do you want to sign into your iCloud account? It's like, no.
There's another issue with the Microsoft web browsers and a lot of websites. When you want to download something, it tries to divert it to your Dropbox first and have you copy it to the Dropbox where you're really trying to download in context where you used to be able to just select the folder you wanted to go to.
Yeah, it's helping.
Yeah, like Molly Malone, she died in the paper.
Actually, and Mac does that as well. They've got a file. It's something in their mail client where basically instead of sending the file to you through email, it copies it to your iCloud and then sets up an automatic share, and then they can just download it from iCloud, which for user experience is indeed better. And for a lot of mail servers that have said, no, you're not going to send me a 10 meg email message, find another way to send something this big. That's not what email is for.
Well, also too, email, like binary attachments grow by 30% too, so email which is not meant to send that crap.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've actually likened it to Apple keeps coming to the playground to offer my employees candy. That's how hard they're trying to shove you into iCloud. Google has their Google tools in G Suite and G Drive and G Spot and whatever else. And when you log into Chrome, you're logging into Google. When you log into Google, you log into Chrome. They are so indistinguishable that you're just getting sucked into their walled garden. And it's getting to be, which walled garden are you in? Are you in Apple's? Are you in Google? Are you in Microsoft's? Dropbox is actually it's still out there, but the other guys are like, but we bundled with all of the other things that you're already doing, so just use that. And in fact, when for the company that I help manage my IT with, I keep pushing them towards, we already have SharePoint, we already have OneDrive, it's all in Office 365. It's one place where we as the admins can manage it. We don't want to have two. Please stop using Dropbox. But of course, all this brings up a pretty big question of, now that we've got everything in the SaaS services, what's the security and privacy impacts of doing so? How much, when you've got that much data in one space, in Apple's iCloud or in Office 365 or in Google, whatever, those three companies are huge targets for hackers to just get anything they can. And what was it, the Fappening, if you guys remember that from several years ago. A bunch of celebrities had, naughty pics, but they were naughty pics that were intended for their boyfriends and girlfriends.
Yeah.
And it got released out onto the web because someone managed to hack into their accounts. And from what I understand, it was all a social engineering kind of thing, where they kind of either guessed their security questions or figured out the password.
Or dog's name or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And but there was also for a while like, well, did just iCloud in general get hacked, and what else could hackers get into it? And will there be a hack of iCloud? I think it's more of a when than an if. Good luck to them keeping up with all the security things. And they do, I mean, the fact that we haven't had multiple ones already is actually pretty good on their part. I think they've done a pretty good job of securing it. But the whole security and privacy thing, I think there's one quote that really sums it up better than anything else. Senator, we run ads, which is kind of disingenuous. I mean, that's like, how do we get to the moon? We used math. Okay, there's a little more to it than just some math. You didn't just like go to the whiteboard and plop us on the moon. There were rockets, there's all kinds of other infrastructure that had to be built, entire new materials that just didn't exist at the beginning of the, when Kennedy first said, we're going to the moon. To say that, you know, we just run ads. Well, how do you sell the ads? How do you target, how do you work with advertisers in order to get them the best value for their dollar? And that's really where the security and privacy starts to unravel, because they're using your data in order to decide what ads to show you. Now, I mean, hopefully they're just using basic demographic stuff that you have. I know that when I was on Facebook, I could see if I changed my birth date by a year, it would change the ads that I got.
Really?
At the very least, it would say, find other 40-year-olds in your area. And then I would change it, find other 41-year-olds in your area. Now, that's probably the most boring and banal of them. But, I mean, it showed that they were zeroing in as much as they could. And there's been some... it's not really entirely clear, I think. And I don't think that we have, and we certainly don't have time to read through all the EULAs and the privacy policies and whatnot to actually have a really good, strong hold on how other companies are using our data for, you know, that we're giving them for free and they're giving us a service for free in order to sell ads. So that's where NextCloud really kind of comes in. Although before that, there was a bunch of other open source solutions that that we could use in order to actually, you know, secure our own data as well. And we've been using them for years. I mean, just mail, Dovecot and the UW IMAP server and SendMail and Postfix, you know, all that infrastructure where we can run mail servers ourselves. And I don't see Rich here, but RSK, if you've seen him on the Novolog mailing list, is a big proponent of security and privacy. And
What about NFS? NFS, it may not be sexy, but it works.
it does, yeah. And it's, you know, you're kind of
Under control.
You are under control of it, yeah. Web servers, I mean, you can set up your own web server as well, and just kind of copy files and data up there as you like. And, you know, in the earliest days of the web, it took some effort to stand up a web server in the early days, and once we got some packages, it became a lot easier. From that, we kind of got the web-based photo galleries that made it a lot easier to actually upload our photos and share it with friends and family. We went from that to blogs, and I mean, you guys are remembering all of this because you lived through the whole thing.
I remember bulletin boards.
Bulletin boards, oh yeah, I mean, BBSs would kind of actually predated the internet, and that's...
That was my first internet email address.
Gopher, yeah.
Fine on that.
With really long email addresses that were, you know, every hop that you needed to do in order to get from here to there, with bangs in between, yep.
But you could go to China and Russia when nobody else could.
Yeah, it just took a while.
Yeah.
Because you're at the mercy of all the dial-up connections between all the different nodes.
5 or 6 days, it wasn't that bad usually.
Compared to to postal mail? No, not bad at all. Which is, you know, that was the alternative.
Well, NNTP had sub-second latency. You could get a message around the world in under a second.
Mm-hmm. You still can't get through it right at the drive-thru.
Yeah, in the old days, you weren't using NNTP, you were using UUCP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wikis made it possible for us to just kind of put up content that was editable, not just by us, but we could then share with teams and put things together. And then file syncing solutions, that's been kind of a hard thing to get. I mean, all the ones that you guys have been talking about, UCP and whatnot, yes, those are things that kind of worked. We can do rsync now, and that kind of works, but it's still a little on the clumsy side, and it's still kind of with some scripts you can make it a little bit easier, but
Git.
Yeah,
Git, yeah, actually for a lot of file sync stuff, that's,
not necessarily for ISOs, but certainly if you're doing a living document thing, that works semi-okay. Gets you from the file share from hell, where the document sits there and nobody ever edits it.
Better
Yeah.
metadata. Better metadata with Git.
better metadata.
Everybody edits it, they all know the
Word, I'm trying to remember, I know that Word had an XML format for a while. I don't know if they still do.
Technically it still is, but it's
Open doc.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to be using Git for a Word document, when you put it up there, does it just completely replace it, or can you actually track bits?
well, it's compressed, so it's compressed XML, so
So yeah,
Git sees it as a blob, so it doesn't do you much good.
right. So if your team is doing all its documentation in LaTeX, then yeah, that makes it a lot easier because someone else can edit another section, you can pull it down and merge the changes and then push your changes back up. But not with something like Word doc.
Something text-based.
Yeah. And calendaring and contacts, while there's been the CalDAV and CardDAV standards for a long time, and there's been a couple projects out there that have supported them. Davacal was one that I used long, long ago. It only worked with Postgres. So you had to kind of figure out how to install Postgres when most of the rest of the world is using MySQL. Yeah. But it mostly worked. Some of the upgrades broke things from version to version. And I did run it for a long time because that's the only thing that was really out there. But it didn't really, it wasn't quite as nicely packaged up as I would like it to have been. And certainly, for a long time, for a decade at least, I've been looking for what is something that can match Exchange. Because Exchange and Microsoft are all the things that we love to hate about them. Exchange is solid. I mean, for managing mail and contacts and calendars and everything else, it just works. They've done a good job with that. It's hard to argue that.
I think it's interesting on your list, you put mail at the top and calendaring and contacts at the bottom. Some fool made email and calendaring in the same app a long time ago, and that's, a good mail client and a good calendar client aren't necessarily together.
Yeah. Well, I was working down more historically.
Time-wise. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I mean, we didn't really have, Mutt didn't have, did Mutt have any kind of a contact database in it? I mean, Thunderbird does.
Well, it had contacts. I mean, it really worked with flat files. I mean, you could hook Perl scripts with it. I had a Perl. I ran Mutt for a long time. I sucked down the gal, and there was this Perl hook that be able to look somebody's name up and not have to type in their whole main email. But it was clunky. It was not to your point. Exchange got it figured out. Everybody, it just works as opposed to creating your own back garden.
Yeah. And then, of course, mobile support being the latest thing to happen in the last 10 years. Trying to get files and whatnot to your phone and calendars and contacts and whatnot. Enter OwnCloud, now NextCloud. Well, kind of both. Frank, something incredibly German that I would slaughter the pronunciation of. He was a KDE developer, was looking for a open source option for cloud storage because he saw the Dropbox thing and how everyone loved it and thought there really needs to be an open source version of this. And so he started putting it together and it eventually became OwnCloud. He forked it away from KDE in 2011 to start a company in Germany to support OwnCloud. And it was set up as a freemium model where there was a community edition that had most of the most common things that you're going to be using, and then an enterprise edition that had some of the more enterprise-oriented, but still, I mean, they'd still be useful to just regular guys. And so eventually he literally forked the company taking the code and a half dozen or so developers with him to form NextCloud, because they were like, no, we want some of these premium things in the actual community edition. There was a big argument, basically, inside of OwnCloud about what features should be in the community version, what should be in the enterprise version. And so they're like, we're going to make another one, we're going to take the code, and we're going to just stick the things that we want into the community edition. Installation for NextCloud is actually pretty easy. They've got a number of different ways of doing it. You can, if you're a sysadmin that likes to do it kind of in the old-fashioned way, stand up your favorite lamp stack and drop, there's a tarball that sets it up. You'll need to, of course, connect, go into the config file and set up point to the proper database, make sure there's a database waiting for it. But then there's also some Docker images that if you're more into doing things with Docker, then that's an easy way to get it set up and running, and kind of keeping it up to date as well. The tarball will also connect to the NextCloud servers and say, hey, is there a new version? Yes, there is. Okay, let's download it, upgrade everything that's in, and do it in place, and run the update. For a while, there was a rather annoying feature, because it was intentional. It wasn't a bug, it was intentional, where it would run the entire setup automatically, and in fact, it would do it without even you having to tell it to do so. But then it would leave the site in maintenance mode. It wouldn't turn it back on and wait for an admin to come in and make sure that, yes, everything is nice and clean and okay, we can fire it back up. Which meant that once every few weeks, you try to get some data from your phone. It's like, why can't I connect? And then you go to the actual site. Oh, because it upgraded itself and left itself in maintenance mode. Thanks. There are some snap packages as well, which are kind of like Docker images by another name, or really, for those of you who've worked with Macs and Next, the app bundles that Apple had. I mean, that's essentially what a snap package is. And it works. If that's the way that you prefer to do things, then it works pretty well. No matter what you're going to be, which way you use it, you're going to be going to that URL there, doc.nextcloud.com/server/, whatever the current version is. And there's some really good installation documentation there. There's actually a lot of, they've gone and written some really good documentation for this. It's pretty impressive. Major features, well, obviously, the first thing that people end up going to NextCloud or OwnCloud for is to get away from the file syncing services like Dropbox, where they just want to be able to store whatever they want in there by themselves. So file sync is like the first thing that you're going to be setting up, and it's actually turned on by default. Photo galleries are a pretty trivial way of thing to add on top of that, and in fact, I think, I'm trying to remember if it's a special directory that you have to just drop it into. Just name a directory and say, this is my photo gallery, and I'll just kind of lay it out. But photo galleries are just kind of there as well. File sharing is a nice upgrade on top of file syncing. So once you got it up, you can very easily say, and create a URL for this particular directory or for this particular file so I can send it to my friend and he can download it from me. And actually, I've done that in the past for the silkscreen presentation. The OVA file, the VM bundle that you can download for silkscreen to test it out and play with it, is a share link on a NextCloud server that I've got set up. It's also got a bunch of groupware stuff. There's a mail client that's actually built in that's not quite as, well, I think the best way to describe it is, it's not Microsoft Outlook for the web, but then again, it's not Microsoft Outlook for the web. It's neither as good as nor as annoying as. You're just basically trading one set of issues for another, but it's pretty functional actually. It looks pretty nice, and it's if you're used to something like Roundcube or Squirrel Mail, depends on how much your muscle memory is stuck on those particular products. You may or may not actually say, no, this is actually a better client, and actually we'll demonstrate it in a bit. And there is mobile and desktop clients for it. So obviously you need a desktop client just to be able to do the file syncing. But the file from the desktop client, you can also generally right-click and say, and create a share link directly from here. You don't have to actually go onto the main site to do it. The mobile client, when you take a photo or you do a video, then it will automatically upload to your whatever directory you tell it to send it to. For iOS, because iOS doesn't have a whole lot of background services, and they do that intentionally just to keep your battery usage from going right into the toilet. You have to turn on, I forget what the name of the permission is, but basically to track that you're actually moving about. And then anytime the software gets a user has moved 100 yards, it'll get a signal and it'll decide, is it been long enough, should I try to see if there's anything new there. And that way, as soon as you've taken a picture and you start walking away, it starts uploading immediately. Without that, then you've got to go in and kind of run NextCloud. And as soon as you run the app, then it says, oh, I see there's like 10 things here that need to be uploaded, and it starts uploading them. Once we've got all that, I mean, that's really the kind of the basic things, the things that most people are going to be installing it because that's what they want in the first place. But then there's a lot of things that can just make it a little bit nicer. They have added file encryption, so and end-to-end encryption. So you can, when you upload your documentation and your documents, it's all, if you've got it set up, it's all encrypted, which makes it possible to, with relative assurance, upload things that are more sensitive. You know, if you really want to keep the tax return documents that you have up there, that would be possible. If you wanted to keep other sensitive personal information up there, that, yeah.
Can you do that file by file, or do you have to do everything?
I think it's everything. I don't recall there being a file. If you want to do it file by file, then you want to encrypt it locally.
Okay.
And yeah.
And I think that encrypts the file names too, does it?
The whole, yeah, I think the whole blob is kind of encrypted.
Yeah.
There's a bookmarking service in there. So you basically add something onto the menu bar, onto the bookmarks bar of your web browser, and when you click that, it takes the URL that you're currently at and sends it to your own cloud instance or NextCloud instance, and just adds in a whole, you just store all the places that you want to go back and check out again. Sort of like Pocket. Tasks and notes. Kind of says what it is. GPX support. How many of you guys have done anything with GPSs, walking around?
Geocaching.
Geocaching, yeah. The GPX files are more for like, if you're going on a hike up a mountain. You can turn on your a GPX thing on your phone, and when you come back, upload it, and you can overlay it.
It'll draw your path on a Google map.
Exactly, yeah. Or on OpenStreetMaps. OpenStreetMaps supports GPX as well. And actually, if you're doing any OpenStreetMap editing, there's a pretty nice app for your mobile device. It'll capture all the GPX data, and then you can overlay it onto the OpenStreetMaps map as well. So you can see, where was I when I was doing this walk? Instant messaging, there is an instant messaging client in there that I don't think it's Jabber based. I don't think it is, which was kind of disappointing for me because I'd like it to have that kind of integration. There might be some way of setting up a Jabber gateway. I haven't looked into that very much. I really should. And then there's a video chat thing as well. That's kind of like Hangouts that works. When I did the presentation at VTLUG, I didn't have access to the campus wireless, so I was just streaming everything through my phone as a hotspot. And even with that, the video quality was impressively good. And then there's a few other things that maybe you didn't realize you needed, but once you start using it, it's kind of nice. There's a personal Kanban board. How many of you guys have worked with Agile? And a few people here raising their hands. So for those of you who haven't worked with it, Kanban is an Agile methodology where basically you have a bunch of 3x5 cards, draw a bunch of columns on the wall, name each column, so the one on the far left might be open, the next one would be dev, the next one would be ready to test, the last one would be tested and ready to deploy, and then deployed and done. So you've got like 6 or 7, they call them swim lanes, but yeah. Column, swim lane, whatever terminology you want to use. And then as you work on something, you can walk past it on the way to the break room and see what the entire team is up to and who's got how much done and how well the project is moving along. And then as you finish one task, you just grab the card and you move it to the next lane, or move it 2 lanes up if it's gone from dev to ready to be deployed. For just managing your own personal to-do list, it's actually really nice. It's a great way to do it because you can see just this week, these are the 10 things that I want to get done. Let's put them all into the far left lane. And then as you start accomplishing things, you move it through whatever steps of process that you've decided you want to do. And at the end of the week, you can look at your Kanban board and say, this is how much I've accomplished. This has been a good week. Well, maybe it hasn't been such a good week. Well, okay, we had relatives over, so my week was disrupted. Okay. But yeah, and then as a quick glance of, I've got a whole list of things I need to do this weekend. What's on the list? Let's move them through as we can. There's a radio, an internet radio client in there. So if you're looking for, I think they maintain their own list. There isn't another list out there. Because one of the guys that actually manages some of the IT at WUVT, WUVT, the radio station, college radio station down in Blacksburg, actually filed a PR in order to get WUVT's streams into NextCloud and NextCloud. But they've got thousands and thousands in there. So if you're looking for anything in particular, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's quite as nice as iHeartRadio maybe, but it's pretty close. And then there's a whole lot of other things that are in there. I put store in quotes because while, yes, there's this entire gallery of apps that you can install and whatnot, I've yet to find a place to put a credit card number. So it's not much of a store if you're never paying for things. It's more just a library. So let's check it out. I'm going to start with the admin interface. If Wayland will work with me.
Okay. The curse, the presentation.
Actually, this is going to be a lot easier if I shift to mirrored, so I can actually see what you guys see. So when you connect to it, let's set up a new private browser real quick. I set one up on cloud.tux.org. So if you have a tux.org account, got a few of you guys out there who do, you now, just by the magic of LDAP, have a NextCloud account as well.
Increase the font size, please. Thanks.
Okay, so I was kind of expecting you to. I'll log out of my own. So when you first go to it, the default one is blue, but because this is Tux, and Tux is really kind of more of a black and white and yellow theme, I changed the background color to be black instead of NextCloud blue. You just get a friendly login. And if you don't fat finger it, then it drops you by default just into your files directory. Now, you're going to look at this as a admin. The top half is just, the same profile information that any other user is going to see. And then underneath that is where all the administration stuff actually kicks in. Working on it.
Enjoy.
Just curious, where is this host?
He's waiting.
So this is saying that it hasn't passed the security and integrity check. There is a nice little feature in there where it looks at all the files and says, is there anything extra there that we weren't expecting? Do the files actually match the expected MD5 sums or SHA-1 sums? And it's just a nice, easy way to make sure that someone hasn't hacked in and added a whole bunch of, because it's all PHP. And if you've worked with any other PHP-based software, yeah, you know just how easy it is for guys to drop stuff in and just make a total mess of the site and do it in a way that hides it from the admins. Now in this case, the list of invalid files is the Git repository that I've got set up in order to help manage it.
That'll constantly change.
Yes, that'll be constantly changing. And actually, I put in a feature request with the NextCloud guys saying, can we whitelist .git and maybe add it to the HT access to make sure that we can't be serving Git as well.
You need a PHP ignore file or something like that.
It's in .ht access that you just stick it in. Yeah, and it just basically map .git/anything to 404. If there's an update available, then you'd be able to do it here. If you are, depending on your risk tolerance, if you want to get the bug of the day, you're welcome to do that. They'll happily send you the broken version every day. That might have been what was causing it, the background jobs. Essentially, there's a cron job that needs to run every now and then in order to keep things processed and whatnot. And so, some of the things that you get from the store will be able to leverage that for whatever they need as well. And the way that you can do it is either through every time there's an AJAX call, then it'll check and see, should I also be running some background processing as well? And we might trip over that. File handling, I don't remember setting it that high. I'm not sure that.
That's the default.
Yeah. Well, the web server has to be able to support that as well. But that's what it says. And then, yeah, you can set it up so that because you're going to have to be able to send out password resets and whatnot, then you need to be able to tell it, this is how you connect to an SMTP server. And when you send stuff out, how do you send it out as? And can you do it just as a straight SM? Well, there's probably other things that you can load in. But 587 is the submission port, which basically treats whatever you've got set up here as though it's a mail client talking to a mail server. But if you've got mail running locally on there, then you can just tell it, just use the local mail server and just drop it right into the queue there and let it take care of it. They've got a nice little monitoring thing built in. It just kind of tracks how many people are using it, how much memory. We might be running into wireless issues here, because there's not a lot of CPU usage going on there. And memory usage, we've got 2 gigs of RAM in there total. It's currently using less than a quarter of it. For only like a few people, it doesn't take a whole lot of memory. 2 gigs is plenty enough for, probably that'd be enough for the whole log. As you get bigger, then you might need to scale it up. And there should be ways of doing it so that if you have like 1,000 people using it, then you have a bunch of web front ends that all talk to a common database backend and a common, probably using NFS in order to create a bunch of common file shares.
Does it also matter what features you have implemented by it? Which one's more memory hungry than something else?
I'm sorry?
But it doesn't matter what features you're utilizing, as with, 100 people doing file shares as opposed to 100 people doing full, we'll call it office mode, where
Probably.
calendaring and all the other cool stuff.
Well, so the web dev and the CalDAV and CarDAV is basically all just web stuff. I mean, that's a web dev style protocol. So it is, aside from the database, searches, relatively lightweight. Same thing with the file sync. It's going to be, it's web dev, so it's not much more heavy than say an rsync client. It's going to be more the how often do you have, how many people do you have, and how many of them are constantly hitting it, because it's doing a constant check to see, or like every 10 seconds or every minute or whatever, to see is there something new there that I need to pull down. But yeah, there's probably some packages like the mail or the video chat is going to be a lot heavier.
But that's chubby.
Yeah, that's especially if you've got a lot of people on the chats, because then it has to do, you might have to do transcoding, you might have to do. They are still a company, so they do stick in a little support thing where if you have a subscription, then it makes it easy to get to their support group. And I mean, this is kind of their sales page for it.
So their revenue model is basically a support infrastructure. All the features are there either way, and like if you're doing, if you're trying to use your enterprise kind of thing, you can have somebody else to call kind of thing. That's your revenue model. Like who's Ubuntu? Not.
I want to say there's actually some features that are still enterprise.
So it might be the freemium model, just a few less.
With fewer things, yeah.
Fewer things over there. You were saying earlier that's what sparked the split from OwnCloud to NextCloud.
Yeah, there was a number of features that they wanted to have in the community version. I don't know if they're really adamant about everything should be in the community edition and nothing should be in the enterprise. I haven't run into anything where I was like, oh, I really like this. Oh, it's in the enterprise version. So, and it might be things like Active Directory integration might be something like that.
Right.
Where
About Collabra.
Collabra is actually is something that you can do in the community edition. And we'll actually see that in just a moment. Sharing, basically just some permissions for admins to say, who's allowed to share it and to whom. They did add a nice federation model where the tux.org NextCloud instance could federate with the VT lug or the Nova lug one. And if not share users, then at the very least say, hey, I want to send this file to my friend at VT lug. And it just says, okay, I can look up the gal, the address book there and see that he is there and route it right to him.
You have this like implemented at like your home, or do you like throw it up in the cloud, like at Amazon or whatever, and then you have your own cloud in a cloud?
I've got, all mine are running at Linode.
Line.
Yeah. I did stand one up inside of an office just for testing purposes inside the office. And the issues that you're going to be running into are the same thing that you're going to run into with any server-based thing. You can only get to it if you can actually get to it. So
I have an instance running on a shared hosting service.
Yeah,
Yeah. On one of the, like, less than a pizza a month cost,
No, it's more than pizza.
with more than,
Oh, yeah, it's at least pumpkin pie.
There's a way for it to kind of automatically say, once you've done a successful share, then automatically add it to the federation list. Usually that's by default turned off because that's way too easy to federate things that you maybe didn't really want. But then there's also just a, add a trusted server to make it nice and easy to do it that way. This is actually NextCloud acting as an OAuth server. So you can use this as a way to connect to other services that you want to be running. Server-side encryption, that's what we were talking about earlier, and it is an all or nothing thing. You turn it on or you don't. Although, to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, if you had a different encryption module that did it on a file-by-file basis, the default one is just encrypt everything. The one that comes packaged in with NextCloud is encrypt everything. But if there's or rather, encrypt everything new that comes in. If you're running it for a while and you've got some unencrypted stuff in there and then you turn on encryption, it doesn't go back and encrypt everything that's already there. It's only the new stuff that comes up that gets encrypted. So copy everything off, copy everything back, and you're done.
Can you assign behaviors by directory? Like, in other words, financial stuff, that gets encrypted by default, but, my dog's pictures, maybe not so much.
I haven't found that. So, but if you could find another encryption module that did that, possibly that's something that's there. Password policy, the basic security stuff. And it's got a nice thing of, check against the bad password list. Make sure that people aren't using things that have already been compromised.
Do you support passphrases?
As in, like, typing along.
Basically, passphrase and password where spaces are allowed inside of it.
This here, I believe it does allow spaces in the password. Do I, on a philosophical level, support them? Actually, yeah. The old XKCD, correct course battery staple, if you remember that one, where remembering 4 words that you put spaces between is a lot easier for you as the human being and is at least as secure as an 8 to 12 character password that's completely random that you'd have to write down to remember. So.
And they're all revealable by a wrench.
And they're all, well, in as much as...
My other favorite XKCD.
Yes. In my case, no, they're not revealable by a wrench because they're all in my 1Password database, and I have no idea what they are.
That's a good point.
LDAP 80 integration. This is just, we have an LDAP server at Tux, and we use that so that we can just have 1Password for all the things that we're going to be standing up at Tux, because otherwise we're going to be I don't want to have 1Password for mail and 1Password for this sharing thing, and another password for the Jabber client that we're going to stand up eventually, and another one for whatever else we do. So we set up a LDAP server, and that's just how we manage the accounts in general, and it makes things so much easier. This does a pretty nice job. Now, the default, is it in here or is it? It's in the advanced. One of these, I think it's the group display name or the, there's a setting in here. Where is it? There it is. Internal username attribute. By default, this is set to UUID, which in a lot of ways is a better way of doing things because you as a user are assigned to UUID early on, and even if you change your last name or your email address or your login name, you're still mapped to that same one UUID, and especially when you're talking with federated clients, that UUID becomes something that they can rely on as never changing. So they always know that this is the same user time and time again. Unfortunately, what that means is when you are looking at someone's account from a federated server, it's not jdoe@tux.org, it's longuuid@tux.org. It's like, well, who's that? I have no idea.
That's a feature.
Yeah.
Also, it's still at tux.org though. It doesn't, I guess the @tux.org is the federation between different.
Right, so that you can tell.
Different forests, excuse me.
Yeah, different sites, different whatever's. But yeah, so changing this to UID, even though that means that you don't ever want to change someone's login, just makes it a lot easier. And the same thing gets used for the directory. There's, in the data directory on the NextCloud server, it'll be the user's name. Or if you've got it set to UUID here, it'll just be a long UUID for where all their data is. And trying to figure out who is who means doing a couple extra steps to find the UUID in the LDAP database before you can actually go in there. Some light theming, like I said, it was blue before, and now it's, in fact, I can show you with the, yeah, it's kind of the standard blue that it comes with. You can even change the header logo and change the favicon, and I think somewhere in those, yeah, you can change the login images and backgrounds. So you can do an awful lot to actually kind of personalize it, just through the basic interface here. A couple basic calendar servers. Can you guys read that pretty well?
Change the background to gray so you can't see anything. I hate gray on white.
Yeah. Who thought that was a good idea?
Somebody has better eyes than I do. Everything's gray.
They've got a number of things that you can say, in your personal stuff, you can take a look at, what's going on. Is that loading or not? There's a way up of taking a look to see what has been going on with my account. Did the file that I just took with my phone actually get uploaded? So they'll be on the app here and on the desktop client. You can take a look and see what activity has been happening lately. But then there's some other things that you can say, should I just put it into that stream and here's all the stuff, or should I actually get an email about it? Because some of these, you might want to know that, oh, someone modified a calendar because I'm working with my high school reunion team, and I want to know whenever someone starts making changes to the calendar. So. Have not worked with this a whole lot. So maybe someone else can do a nice presentation on NextCloud workflow. Setting up the talk stuff so that it can actually communicate well. Bookmarks. For their own use, in a lot of similar to the popularity contest that Debian has, there's some stuff, and they're nice and open about what they're actually going to be sending. Do you send this, and whether or not you send it at all. Just kind of to give an idea of what kind of servers are actually running NextCloud. How much memory do they have? How many users do they have? Do they use encryption? Anything else that has some configuration stuff in it? I've added the weather module into this. That's one of the things that's up on the store, the library. But that requires an open weather map API key, which I haven't bothered to go and set up yet. But this is where you would find the very last additional settings on the left side. So let's take a quick look at some of the things just from using my own. So yeah, as a user, you're going to get the major things up across the top here. You know, the first thing you're going to see is the files and photos. And here's a bug that I ran into. When you have encryption turned on, or maybe it's a combination of encryption and LDAP, when you create a new user by logging in, it tries to set up, these are 3 just stock photos that they throw into your account just so you can see what it's supposed to look like with some photos in there. But they don't seem to work well with the encryption module, and either they're not encrypted or there's no key, and so it fails and sets it to 0 bytes, or something is going on there, which is why you don't see anything here. I don't think I've uploaded anything. Actually, I have. These are the happy kids that are at VT-Lug. There's Brendan, who's probably going to be the president next year, and this is Paul, who's the current president and about to come up to DC and work for a big company up here as he's graduating. Yeah, it's a good group of kids. Maybe we'll do some nice thumbnailing as well. The talk interface looks an awful lot like Slack or what am I thinking?
Matters list?
I'm sorry?
Matters list?
I haven't worked with that one.
I thought that was what you're trying to come up with.
Yeah. But let's see. I'm going to send him a text just in case he doesn't see this.
So when you're texting, do they have to have NextCloud client to receive it?
Yes. At least I think so. I haven't figured out what you can do. You guys, that's not going to work very well, is it?
Firefox plugin for this? Or is this just PHP?
Just PHP. You don't need any additional plugins in order to run the site. It does it all through whatever base web technologies are out there now. You probably need a fairly recent version of Firefox, but that's about the worst of it. Something that handles HTML5 well. An old copy of Opera probably isn't going to cut it. But Vivaldi, if you guys have been following that at all, it's based on Chromium, done by the same guy that did Opera, and is in a lot of ways Opera 2.0, and is quickly becoming one of my favorite web clients out, or web browsers out there. It's kind of like Chrome if Chrome actually valued your privacy.
They say they do.
Yeah. I don't have enough service to actually send them a text here. Yeah, I've noticed that every privacy policy includes 2 phrases in it. Your privacy is very important to us, This may change at any time.
You may die, but, or your health is a great concern to us.
Yes.
First one, I believe, my privacy is very important to them. They want to take it.
Yes, it can be monetized.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to this. The mail client, you can set up multiple accounts. With the various boxes that you have here, and then, you know, as it,
No, it won't change.
I'm sorry?
I was thinking so out loud. I'm sorry.
The actual mail's here, and then, you know, the preview of it here. Although right now it's going to be, there.
So does that act as a mail server, or is it just interface to a mail server?
It's an interface to a mail server. It's just a front-end web, IMAP client, essentially. And it's, for a web client, it's actually pretty nicely done.
Does it pull contacts from your contact list? Is
It'll pull it from here, from the contact list that's in NextCloud itself.
that, that's fine.
How well does the mail client do at not getting underfoot? For a web client, it's like saying, for a murderer, be law-abiding. Will you expose the full header to the user if he wants to see it or edit it? Will you comply with all of the RFCs and conventions?
I haven't done that deep of a dive into it to say. From here, you're not going to be able to say, show me all the headers. I don't believe that's a feature in there. Although they'll happily accept a patch.
All complaints accepted in unified diff format.
Exactly. It's a great way to put all complaints accepted in unified diff. That's a great way of putting it.
Actually, nowadays, I guess it's accepted as a PR, or PR requests are gratefully accepted.
Yeah.
You can't understand that.
Which are themselves just, you know, divs, or rather, you know, Git branches.
Well, lately, I said unified diff to somebody that was quite a bit younger than me. They looked at me like I had 6 heads. Oh, you need a PR? Yeah, okay. I may have spent a little more time on news groups than other people have in my life.
But adding new contacts is fairly easy.
Does it learn contacts from your emails that you receive, kind of thing?
Well,
Or can it? Or you left mouse click on and say, remember this, or not that quite?
I'm not sure why it's giving me such a headache right now about, you know, it should be telling me the from addresses on these, but it doesn't seem to even want to do that right now. But it does on that one. Just opening each of my draft formats, that's really good. Or you just have some kind of old ones. I don't know if it'll automatically add or not. Since most of the time I'm using my desktop mail client,
Yep.
which integrates in with the desktop contacts thing, which then sends,
You
syncs
don't live your
everything
life on
up.
webmail, thank goodness. Yeah.
It's there if you need it, and if I happen to be like at a conference or something and I didn't have my desktop or whatever, or I was in someone's office where I couldn't have it, then it would be really, really useful. The calendar is similarly pretty nicely built and relatively lightweight for mail clients or for a web thing.
I guess you could suck iCal links into it too if you wanted to. Right?
Yeah. And again, I do that kind of through my new subscription, yeah. iCal.
Like we use PagerDuty at work, and it broadcasts your thing, and I suck it into my personal account and suck it into that.
Yep.
It's kind of cool.
And years ago, Novolog had a Drupal site that actually exported out an iCal subscription. And anytime we added a new meeting notice, we would add node, new meeting, who's going to be speaking then, and where and when and whatnot. It would automatically add it to the iCal list, and because your mail client or your calendar is polling like every day or whatever, you would get it automatically. So yeah, I mean, you can do that, adding iCal links very easily to this. The Kanban board, they call it deck. I'm going to
What did you call this?
deck.
What is it functionally?
Kanban, K-A-N-B-A-N. It's a Japanese word that means card. So, the same way Kubernetes is Greek for cybernetics. That's all it is. So yeah, all the Docker management stuff is just Greek for cybernetics. So if you want to say Docker, it's Greek to me, well,
Yeah.
to everyone else too. Add a new item.
It's like a private Trello is another thing somebody here uses. I never heard of it before.
If you do want to set this up with some friends, then you actually do assignments and whatnot. So yeah, let's assign to me. And there, boom. And then, okay, so I'm doing the presentation now, so you can just kind of drag and drop between the swim lanes.
Hey, nicely done.
Yeah,
Does it let you do colors on the Kanban?
do,
Or each task? Some people like changing colors on different tasks.
Or status.
I don't, let's find out.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently, yeah.
So that way you can easily distinguish the difference in different tasks.
Yep.
If you're not colorblind.
Then you add new, what they call it a stack. And then you just drag the entire stack to be, yeah.
Nice interface.
And this is a personal board. Maybe you've got a different board entirely that you want to have, and we'll give that a different color.
Okay, so your boards are down the left side.
Yep. And you can share them and whatnot.
Do you make those public? Like you said, share obviously with other users. Is there like a public link kind of thing? Maybe not necessarily editable, but certainly.
Then it's not personal Kanban.
I don't know. I've never tried.
That's probably an edge case.
But for something like a,
If you're planning a party or something, everybody's already got an account, so that works better anyways.
right. No, I was thinking more like, if you're trying to do some kind of transparency thing,
Yeah.
like government accountability thing, where you want to be able to say, here's the Kanban board of where all of the projects for the county are in progress.
Well, like one thing I saw was use case for was like certain projects in we'll call it a roadmap, and it's one of the here are the feature requests kind of thing. And this one's actually being worked on kind of thing. And it's more or less kind of the same tree as like when people up down and down vote things, or have a bounty, the bug bounty thing kind of thing, or feature bounty. So that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And certainly, if you're trying to, you probably want to make more high-level one. You know, we're working on these major features,
Yeah.
and this is what's going to be showing up in the next several versions. Yeah, that would actually not be bad. And then you can create different stacks for each version, and then just either rename them or just move them to
One
done.
version's gonna end up in, oh, sorry, I got pushed to the next version, sorry
Yeah.
guys. And I'll send you 100 emails like, hey, where's that new feature you promised? Yeah, it's got pushed to the next version, sorry.
Something else that might be nice to have public is the calendar. If you're in a situation where people have to be able to contact you and there's no good way to tell them when you're gonna be around and when you aren't, if they could get access to your calendar or a redacted version of your calendar and say, well, yeah, he's out of town today, I'll try tomorrow.
If you're a band, where am I playing? Things move around.
That I think there is a way of doing, although I'm at a loss to dive in and find out where it is right now.
Like there was a share link right next to the name of the calendar.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a, there we go, public access.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Is that across the calendar or private?
That would be for that particular calendar. So you'd set up like a,
Scheduled calendar, my public schedule.
yeah, world
And-
tour.
And that's the more normal use case, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then you have the radio one.
See,
Now, fortunately, the search is localized. Whatever app that you're currently in, that's what the search is going to be working in. So,
Boy, how's it figure out where you're at?
well, you click on radio, you're in the radio section, so it's going to be searching the radio stations.
Oh, you said local, I thought you meant local, like Washington DC area versus
Oh.
California.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
I
no,
read
no.
way too far into that. My fault.
Yeah, different localizing. Come on, bring back the radio. And this is where we get to see if the audio here is... What's playing on Move It today?
Christmas music.
Would work better if I sent it out the headphone cord. There you go. Yeah.
This whole system makes a very good use case for like the Chromebook mode of operating, because you live your life in a browser now.
Yeah, if you've got a Chromebook, then you could probably, Chromebook plus NextCloud
Yeah.
will get you pretty far. And it'd be kind of nice to see someone come up with, let's call it a Tux book. That is, maybe probably Firefox, but, a browser that, or some WebKit-based thing. There's one that comes with GNOME that I'm blanking on the name of. But it's basically just the WebKit widget wrapped in a window.
Oh,
It's a very basic browser for,
Randbox? It's one thing I use for like the web interface of Teams and a couple other things is they call Randbox, and it's like a very simple browser, but it seems to implement most things. Microsoft Teams, that is.
they just call it GNOME Web, basically. I mean, and it is, just the WebKit GTK widget wrapped in a window with some basic bookmarking functionality.
Easy to maintain.
A nice default. Nice thing, yeah.
Very light browser.
Did I ever get signal back? No, I have no service here. I do want to see if we can get that. Where's that chat?
if you could get me in a federation, then I could,
We'll have to set that up. Yeah.
for fun.
This one here is actually running with a Postgres backend because that's I like to play with Postgres just for the experience, just so I can get some practice with it. It of course runs with some MySQL variant Mario or the actual MySQL, whatever you like. And you've got it set up with SQLite as your backend, don't you? Oh, no, you actually got it working with,
Yeah.
with MySQL?
I'll mention some things I did after you get done.
Okay. But yeah, if you just want to kind of test it out, or if you're just kind of trying to run it for just you, then SQLite as a backend is also an option. It's obviously not going to be nearly as powerful or as fast, but for only one person, who cares? Well, maybe you do, but
It's a default, and it
It's
just,
just you.
it's the default, and it's easiest to set up because it's just there.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
It just won't scale.
No, but it's not intended to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that SQLite is the most popular database platform in the world based on number of installs.
It runs on my web phone.
Because every single app you have on your phone has got its own copy.
It's fairly, in that, while you say it don't scale, it's amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think Apple's mail client uses a SQLite database as the backend just to kind of index all the mail that you have.
Thunderbird
probably does the same.
It's contact databases or SQL databases.
Yeah. So yeah, for just app that needs to talk to a backend just to keep some stuff in a database, it's fantastic, and it does actually scale.
What developer wants to, reinvent that wheel?
Exactly.
I need to store contacts. Well, I could reinvent that wheel, or
And if you've got it with some reasonable SQL, reasonably generic SQL, then shift it from SQLite to MySQL is just a matter of pointing the PDO connector to something different. Unfortunately, I don't. Let me see if I can get on the wireless here. So while we're waiting for Eric to get his laptop set up, you guys have any other questions?
Have you gotten any of the Office Suite software out there to integrate with this successfully? The word processors or the something docs?
Total Office.
Yeah,
LibreOffice.
I did. When I first set it up a year or two ago as OwnCloud, before NextCloud forked off from it, I had some stuff working with that. I haven't tried to set it up recently, although let's go into the store and take a look and see what additional apps are out there.
Calabra.
Only Office works well. Only, yeah, I think as well. You're capable of editing documents within the next 12.
Yeah, there are two major ones out there. OnlyOffice is one that he was mentioning, and Collabra is the other. Collabra is essentially running a version of OpenOffice on the server and then setting up a VNC connection to it. So it works. It's just really, really memory intensive, and without a whole lot of a pretty beefy server, it's not going to scale.
so you're having some scale issues. Just again, with the just you argument, you'll probably be all right.
Right, but I don't know if even with a 2 gig VM, if I could effectively run it. The other one is, where's the Office stuff?
LibreOffice was working on an online offering kind of thing. theoretically I could.
Yeah, that's Collabora, I think is,
Oh, is that what it is?
yeah, they call it Collabora.
Oh.
And then the other one is OnlyOffice, which is also, it doesn't work the same way. I think it does a little more in the HTML5 realm, but it is, because the backend has got to be tracking everything that you're doing on the document so you can share it with everything else. It's essentially running a micro version of a word processor on the server itself. And again,
It's expensive.
you may end up with some scaling issues with that, but it is there and you can give it a try.
One of the things I would want to do if I were sharing documents with people is to annotate a PDF file in such a fashion that other people can see my annotations.
PDF editing,
Well, not editing.
well, but annotating, yeah. Don't know if they have that in here.
I mean, you could do it the long way and just edit it and do the web dev.
Yeah, and then just copy it up as a file, leave it in your shared files directory, edit it with your favorite local editor.
Right, but what I'm talking about is annotating a read-only PDF.
Yeah.
The annotations are in an external file.
Oh, sticking it so that it's metadata that's external.
People that are collaborating with me can use my annotation when they're viewing the document, and I can use theirs.
But when you send the document itself, it doesn't have any of the annotations
Right.
in it. No, I haven't seen anything like that, actually, ever. If there's, PDF does support the concept of comments and annotations, so you can do that.
So that's,
But that all gets saved back into the file itself. So let's go through some of the things that are we have here. The files. Now, they've got reviews, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people reviewing them. A lot of them are going to be either 5 stars, 1 star, or 2.5 stars.
It's just the average of the low and high.
Yeah.
They don't change
Sample
the
size
rating
too
when
small.
there's a new version of the software.
So-
You won't see a new rating when there's a new version of the software, so you're looking at 2 stars from version 1.0 versus 3.0.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing when you hover over this to see that it's gotten any better. In fact, you got to actually jump to their store thing in order to see much of anything on it. See if it works.
So John, would it be useful if I share my
Hey, Eric
experience?
Langraf wants to talk to me.
Would it be useful if I share my experience of starting that?
Yes, indeed.
oh, reminds me of WebEx. Chat alongside.
And chat can be kind of shifted out.
Exactly like that, man.
Probably very much inspired by.
We're gonna start- Exactly.
Do you have any experience with, or know anybody that has used the NextCloud box for Western Digital?
No, I do not.
I got it about a year and a half ago, and it's a nice little box that is an enclosure for a terabyte disk drive and a Raspberry Pi 3, which makes me just giggle to think about that combination. But they've got a nice cable that splits they've got a USB power supply and a nice cable that splits it up to both of them. So you've got a very clean installation. And I played around with the version of NextCloud for it and had problems and got the sense that the people that came up with it were just being swamped with support and stuff. So I backed off, and I'm now running it as a Git server. And I did some poking around, and it looks like Western Digital has closed the whole thing out about a month and a half after I went back to using Git. But it was a beautiful box. I mean, I'm happy. It was like $100 and something. I already had the Raspberry Pi 3 for the terabyte drive and the power of the cables.
Yeah, for just that's maybe a little bit expensive for just a terabyte drive, but that's not bad for something that you could turn into a little microserver. Yeah.
I come from the world where the big disk drive was about this high. And had 500K bytes, I think.
Yep.
And so I just think the terabyte is just hilarious.
People like Microsoft drives.
Oh yeah, the things are the size of a washing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that big, wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's talking about the old back
You're talking
stuff.
about the real big ones.
Yeah.
No, I thought the double height 5 1/4s were big, never mind.
Oh yeah. Now these are ones that where you did not wear a digital watch near them because they had such powerful magnets that it would erase, it would just screw up your watch.
Or if the heads jumped back and forth enough, they would walk like a washing machine across the floor.
Still getting no audio.
Still getting no audio. Can you see me?
About one that's 6 feet high and stores 6 million digits.
Wow.
Somebody talks to you about the good old days, they don't know what they're talking about. Because the good old days were horrible.
Integrated camera, built-in analog stereo for the microphone.
Audio.
Yeah, this is a little disappointing. So it thinks that we're actually connected into there, but it doesn't seem to actually be able to send audio back and forth.
That begs an interesting question. Does everything happen across HTTP, or does it throw some extra ports in there that may have to punch holes in firewalls and such?
That's a good question. Probably there's going to be at least some stun and turn stuff in order, because we're both going to be behind NATs.
Yeah, that
So-
could be interesting.
But they, well, except that we should also both be connecting it to the server, and the server is going to be replicating everything so that, you know, whoever is currently talking, whatever, it's sending the video for everyone back.
Well, your connection to the server is just 100% HTTP, nothing else.
No idea. No idea.
John, can I share my experience a little bit?
Sure, come on up.
I'll just talk from here.
Okay.
Roger Brocious. I came into NextCloud at the suggestion of this gentleman up here, so I thank him for that. And I'm really far behind John in terms of capability. I call myself a man over machine with a lot of difficulty, but I had wanted to be able to sync files, so I looked at a bunch of different options, including syncing to D drives and so on. Of course, the problem with that is everything you send to Google, they scan it. There's no privacy. Unless it's encrypted, you're dead. And finally, this came along. So I'll jump to my experience of installing. And this was from scratch, and I probably spent a week off and on. That's why I call it man over machine. I'm hosting this on a shared server outside of my house. I don't want to create a server at home. And I had some difficulty setting up there. Part of it was very easy. You download a file, and I have SSH access to the server, the shell, and unzip a file. Then you access that file or set of files via the web browser, the admin interface that you saw there, and it automatically jumps to administrative mode to set up. And then all that's really cool, except it needs a database. And if you want to have something more powerful than the simple database that John mentioned, you have to set that up in advance. And every time I tried to get past that step, I got crazy errors. It was impossible to understand what was failing. You can also install from the command line via a shell access, but I tried both ways. And it turned out, and this is good information if you ever run across it, that I did not have, quote, full access to the database. I could set up a database, but I didn't have full access. So it was failing when I got to the step in the automatic scripts going behind the scenes to access the database. It kept throwing weird errors that had made no sense to me. Finally I got past that, and everything worked great. I've implemented file sharing and a few other things. Some of the apps work on here, okay, on a Droid. I mainly do file sharing and notes. Notes are very nice on this. Some of the other applications, I could not get them to work very well on a Droid. Some of the apps are available on F-Droid. If you know what F-Droid is, it's an open source, FOSS source of applications. I got the Notes app going nicely. I got the file sharing app going nicely. Calendar seems to require CalDAV. Couldn't get it to work. I avoid accessing via the web browser, which is a backup thing you can do, of course, because I want to have direct access into this. I installed it easily in Linux, a client in Linux with app image, which is a snap-like thing, I believe. So you download app image from NextCloud server, you run it, bang, you've got your automatic file syncing going, and you can set it up to pop up and be live when you reboot. Many of the apps for the Droid seem to be sort of in development and a little bit clumsy or non-functional. I couldn't get the calendar to go. There were a couple other things that I tried. So your mileage may vary on a Droid right now. Maybe that was because I'm not a strong enough mom. I don't know. Anyway, I managed to get this thing going, and I'm pretty clumsy when it comes to Linux and the command line and so on, but it worked. Any questions on my experience? Okay.
Your mileage may vary well on current Apple devices, both the desktop and the laptops, because it'll work with calendaring, but the contacts, they've done something and they've broken the card dev interface. Works fine on Android, works fine on Linux, works fine on a bunch of other things. You can't sync contacts on Mac OS or iOS right now.
I looked also at online editing, and it appears to me the one needs to, as he pointed out, to install something like Calabra on the server. I don't believe that I have sufficient rights on my shared server to be able to do online editing. But it's very easy. Every morning I keep track of my vitals. I'm an old fart. And I just click on the app to download the file. Actually, you can set it up so it's available offline. Enter the data using ANDR Open Office. Save it, and it syncs back to the cloud.
The lightweight hosting companies, the DreamHost and HostGators and things like that, you're not going to be able to run Collabora on that because you're not going to be able to install that, the OpenOffice package that you need to run on the server. But any Linode or anything like that, you should be able to install it pretty easily.
I keep all my passwords in KeyPass, which has clients that are on Windows, Linux, and on a Droid. And I put the KeyPass files and sync them. If I need to pull up a password, I open it up, close it. If I change them, edit it on the Droid, it gets saved back to the cloud. The syncing works pretty well.
So taking a quick look at the store, they've got them all split up by group, and actually, it's really how they're tagged. So one particular app may show up in multiples of these sidebars because it's tagged as both an Office and a search, so it'll show up in both. The top one that they have is just customization, which just kind of gives you little ways of tweaking the interface, whether it's the app order or some CSS, external sites. This one here, which gives you a splash screen of multiple images, or changes the background splash. And again, you're like 2.5 stars. 5 stars. So it's probably like 1 review. Some changes to the way that files are done, whether it's activities for shared downloads, to be able to track how, I guess this is how much a shared file is downloaded. Camera raw previews if you work with raw files at all. Draw.io is, think online Visio. Give you some integration with that. External support for Google Drive. There's one here for Amazon S3 as well. So you can take all the stuff and encryption, all the stuff that you're doing with the files can also be saved off the server in something bigger and maybe more robust. Email. Randomly clean. That scares me.
Yeah, that is. Sounds like randomly delete.
The group folders, being able to create folders that you can share with other users and just share with everyone rather than, because by default this is your folder and you can maybe share it with someone else, but if you can create a group folder then it's not owned by anyone, it just kind of exists by itself and there's a group that gets assigned to it. Link editors, metadata. Metadata looks like it's mostly XM stuff for camera stuff, which if you do a lot of digital photography, can be really useful. Mind map application. Here's only Office. We have a link to students for. From the things I've read online, both Only Office is apparently more liked out there right now, but both of them are just memory hogs. So you can set up quotas and it sends out a quota warning. Ransomware protection and recovery. I'm not entirely sure. This would be something interesting to look into, especially if you're trying to run this for a nonprofit or an enterprise, just to make sure that all the data that the company has is nice and safe. That's in the file section. Games. There's only Keep and Sweep is a game. It doesn't give me any more. Yeah. So some of these you'll see says official.
They're like officially supported by NextCloud as opposed to.
Someone at NextCloud has bothered to look at them. The others maybe not so much.
Is that a strong plus or just another data point?
I would consider it to be a pretty strong plus because if the guys that are at NextCloud are looking at it, then as you go from major version to major version, they're less likely to break.
Probably think that people there are actually running it and they'll notice it as they break when they're playing with betas.
Right. It'll get more attention.
Somebody's
more eyes
personally
on it.
investing because they use it.
Right. Yeah, setting it up so you can log in through Google or through Twitter. Monitoring only has one, multimedia. Yeah, radio is one that I added in. You can see the ones that I've actually added by whether or not it has a disable on it. Audio player, if you want to upload your own music, it gives you kind of an iTunes-like interface through NextCloud. Yep. How many of you guys have worked with OpenStreetMap?
Downloaded it, but I wouldn't call it working with it.
Yeah. That'd actually be a nice presentation to do as well if we can find someone that's actually done some serious work with it. And I know one of the guys at a VT Lab, actually Paul, who's going to be coming up here in the next month or two, has done a lot with OpenStreetMap and might be willing to do a presentation around it. I'll talk to him, see if he's Office and text. Deck is actually considered an office one. That's the Kanban board that we were looking at earlier. Contacts is one of the officials, so is Calendar, which is good because it was bundled with it, with NextCloud or with OwnCloud, and then it got pulled out and made into an app that wasn't official, and it broke between, I want to say major version 8, major version 9, or somewhere around there, and now it's finally become official again, so it doesn't break on updates. The mail client that we're using, note-taking, available on Android. So this must be something that integrates well with the Android note-taking app. Is that the one that you work with? Carnet? No? Quick Notes, which looks like it's basically a sticky, we'll put some sticky notes into a tab. There's an awful lot here. I mean, it's worth going through and trying them, and it's like, oh, I didn't really like this one, so just get rid of it. Etherpad. Has anyone worked with Etherpad or EtherCalc? It's new to me.
I've used it in the past, back when it was back before it shut down. But it was open source, so the company that did Epiphan shut down, and then basically there were a bunch of forks after they shut down. So
Okay.
it's just
Was it kind of like Evernote but open source?
I'm not too familiar with Evernote. It was basically you go to a web page and it's basically Word doc editing. You could check in real time, and somebody else would be on the same link and be able to see you editing in real time and make presentations themselves.
But a lot lighter weight than, I guess, than a full word processor.
As I understood it, yeah.
Yeah.
You could change font colors and sizes and stuff, but I don't know if you could do grids, like insert tables or things like that.
And probably no footnotes and headers and, yeah.
Didn't use it that much. Basically, I used it for a quick place to paste stuff and grab it from another sheet and keep notes and stuff.
The thing is good for collaboration as well. If you don't have enough memory on your system to run the full Collabora, then something like this might be sufficient for your needs.
It's all text, yeah.
If it's all text, then, and that might be easier to install on something that's the DreamHost or HostGator or whatever kind of class of hosting. So, And
I just add it locally.
apparently one person liked it and one person didn't.
I just add it locally and let it sink.
Why the orientation towards open office as opposed to LibreOffice?
LibreOffice tends to be, has more or better file support. They manage the Microsoft Word formats better, from what I understand.
Right, but the material you presented seems to be talking about open office more than LibreOffice, and I'm wondering why that is.
The LibreOffice is under the hood for one of the applications.
Right, there's the Collabora one.
Yeah.
I don't know that, a lot of times distinctions will show up.
Well,
Yeah, and people tend to use OpenOffice and LibreOffice interchangeably.
Yeah.
the problem is open office seems to be frozen.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but a lot of the distros caught LibreOffice, but it didn't actually rename it until like you reinstalled the distro kind of thing, to break all your links and everything else, so. Not saying they are the same thing, I'm just saying that they get used interchangeably, for better or worse.
Yeah, well, I use open office, but if I need new features,
And then a simpler task app. Although, once I started using, this supports some, just link to a NextCloud calendar, sync to your local client, so you can actually edit it and use it in Thunderbird or Revolution or something like that.
Oh, wow. Neat.
So that would be a reason to use the task app instead of the Kanban board. Just that integration. I don't think the Kanban board, I have no idea how that would, if you try to integrate that in with the task app somewhere else, how that would even work.
A couple people use Kanban boards for task lists. I guess I have too many of them, but it seems a little heavy for me. It's more of I'm a list maker, so.
The calendar is one that's installed. We took a look at that one. Admin notifications are good if you're actually managing a fairly large set install. Note taking with some good stuff, and apparently integrates well with Android. Well, Android and Linux, your web browser, some capabilities. So it sounds like for any particular thing that you're trying to do, there's several options out there already for this. And having looked at this like a year or so ago, there's a lot more in the store than there was then. So there's a lot of support in the community that I'm starting to see for stuff here. Contacts, mail, talk, we've already got those. Circles, we saw that one earlier.
What's drop it? Or am I reading that wrong?
Drop, no, I read it, drop it too.
Is that for people to send you files?
Just drop text and data quickly to your NextCloud for those times you just want to share a file that don't care about where to store it.
Oh.
Okay? Another GPX editor.
does the calendar app only support the Gregorian calendar, or does it support multiple calendars?
I don't know. I've never tried. I would not expect there to be good support for anything else. Probably not. Probably not. Which other ones would you be looking for?
Hebrew calendar?
That would probably be one of the ones that would get better support than anything else.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen anything there. There is a XMPP JavaScript chat.
Ah.
So there is some integration, but it's not through the main chat.
No, I'm surprised they implemented something else. XMPP is fairly stable, I think, although it's not nearly as cool as it used to be. But
XMPP is rather chatty. If you're using it in an enterprise, and it's going to be flooding the network with messages all day long. because it's sending to, when I talk to you, it'll be sending a message from me to every single device that you have.
Well, I mentioned, when you start chatting to me, it says, by the way, I'm gonna send you something, is that whole,
Right, and then there's, yeah, person is talking or is typing.
yeah, all those stats, man. I mean, to be fair, a lot of times, a lot of software uses XMPP for not people-to-people thing, but actually just almost like a message bus. So it's technically that, people just glommed onto it
For chat.
people.
There's a lot of different extensions to XMPP, some of which conflict with other extensions.
Yeah. Jingle, never caught on.
Yeah, it's not a bad, well, it's not a great protocol, but it's not a bad one either. Because it does take a fair bit of hand-to-hand combat with the server in order to get it to work well.
Well put, hand-to-hand combat.
Sharing via email. A lot of social sharing, if you want to be setting that up.
You go through all that work to create your own little private cloud, then you're plugging social media.
Well, sure, because I mean, you want to have stuff here, but it's like, oh, I just took a cat picture on my phone, and it's now automatically synced up to my iCloud, and now I want to send that to Facebook. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that.
That's fair.
Tools. I really need to set up the key for this. The open weather key. Antivirus, which just basically links in with ClamAV. Auto mail accounts to help create mail accounts when people log in. It'll create a new account on NextCloud.
So you have ClamAV scan the files that are sitting on your drive.
And probably as you upload them and download them as well, in particular. Ooh, 1 star, not a good sign. Looks like it would be really useful if it actually worked. Yeah, we've seen a lot, I mean, files from mail, we've seen this one pop up 3 times now. External storage from Google Drive, that was in another section up above. The GPX stuff, there's at least 3 of them. If you've got a GPS and you use it a lot to kind of track your hikes and whatnot, especially if you'd like to do a lot of national forest hikes and whatnot. These are actually pretty nice. I've got a friend who, she's trying to walk the entire AT section by section. And so she's got copious notes about, started from here on this date and did a 2-day hike down to here and back. Something like this would probably be good for her to just kind of keep track of, so she can actually see it on the map. It looks like just about everything gets dumped into tools if nowhere else. Sync text to the cloud. I don't know what Pico is. Pico CMS?
So would that provide a link between your phone, SMS, and NextCloud?
Apparently. An app to sync SMS with your cloud. That's... I'm kind of curious how it actually gets the SMS out of your phone.
The same way the NSA does.
JS Loader is probably something that you don't need specifically, but other apps probably depend on. So there's, I mean, as you can see, there's an awful lot in here. And installing something is as simple as, let's do it for the ClamAV just because that's probably a good thing to do.
There's a huge client base for NextCloud. Right, Tom?
with one of those passwords that a wrench would not get.
The rent just needs an extra step. Need your password to your password manager.
So I have to admit, usually for passwords, I do the the easier to remember ones when I'm actually going to remember them, as opposed to, so I'm just going to a little password manager, and it's 40 bytes a hash, and I move on.
You just type in your password and then it starts downloading. And if there's any settings for it, it would probably show up under this one might actually throw it under files. There's a files. I don't know if I show it under.
What activity shape? Where it went?
Nope, apparently not. This activity here is 9 days ago. There's an antivirus. No activity yet on the antivirus. But it does actually give its set up its own activity stream, which is kind of nice. So when I gave this talk to VTlug, we suggested that they would set up their own NextCloud instance for the log and all the members there, and then federate it with the Tux.org one. Does that sound like something you guys would be interested in doing as well? Setting up a lug-wide NextCloud instance somewhere?
What would
I've got someone here.
What would it do that we don't have now, besides replace this situation we have with announcing meetings? Like get rid of Meetup?
Well, it would be, we would need someone who would be willing to actually step up and manage it, maintain it, just to keep it secure and patched. But then it would be a place where you can just, because you belong to Novolog, keep your contacts and whatnot. You just have a little place to toss up a couple of files if you need to. So, and in a way that you don't have to manage it on your own. But then, you and I could federate ours to the Novolog one if we wanted.
Well, the idea's out there. I suggest we kick it around the email list and get it going.
Is anyone here willing to actually step up to do some of the management on that?
I would think about it.
All right.
But could this replace Meetup? Like with the calendar or whatever?
Possibly.
But then everybody has
I
to.
mean, what Meetup is a place where everyone goes to search, right, to find it. So
Yeah.
you ask all the people who are finding us. They're finding us because they know the Meetup site. If we make this site, how are they finding it?
Google.
Yeah, but that's not what they're using, right? They go in and say, what's in my area, or I need to find something about this.
So yeah, then it wouldn't be replacing it, but it could be a place where we could stick more details about the meetings.
Could they mirror each other?
To a limited extent, sure. I mean, at least the calendar entries. The meetup things could be, copy paste the description on the meetup one to a calendar entry.
I would suggest that think about what this could do for you before we start figuring out who can make it run. What would we use it for?
Okay.
How would we augment, let's say, the mailing list? How would we augment the meetings? And what features do we need? And then we can figure out who can help set it up if we find an area or areas where we'll augment. Right? I really doubt that if we want to do instead of a Slack channel, we'll go on here. That I'm not seeing the advantage of doing that if we want to chat. But I can see there could be other things that we want to do, collaborate, that we can't do on a mailing list. But let's figure out what those are.
Okay.
Now that you've shown pretty much this could do everything from end to end. I mean, we could even have the mailing list here, I'm pretty sure, right? So.
Doesn't really support the mailing list, but you could at least, it could be a good place for you to go and check your email if you're not near your phone or near your...
But you showed a kind of wiki there, right?
There's a wiki, yeah.
So if you have a kind of wiki, that could be, instead of making a mailing list, you go in and add a topic to a wiki. It's the same thing in essence, like. You could.
Mailing list,
Anyway,
right,
but that's
exactly.
what I'm trying to say. I think what we need to figure out is, as a group, how could we use this to make our group work better? And what features should we have? And if we can find something, we say, this would just make it so much easier, then I think it might be easier to motivate someone to go and say, I can want that.
If nothing else, it could be something that allows us to have other projects, sub-projects. If we wanted to have a lug SIG, a special interest group on, I don't know, XMPP and managing that, or on 3D graphics, and just give them a place to set up their own group. Yeah.
Do we have any figures on how many people found out about Novolog through Meetup, as opposed to people that are only on Meetup because of Novolog and would unsubscribe immediately if there were an alternative channel?
Nope, I'm not that, well, maybe Peter does.
Just say,
Peter's always, one thing that this has that Meetup doesn't is it's not tracking you like Meetup. That's one of the reasons I don't like Meetup, is it's just another social media site out there tracking me and gathering my information.
all I can tell, I mean, from the one we have, now that we have a who's coming and a who's not coming,
Mm-hmm.
compared to when we were at the libraries where everyone was just showing up, we have new people every time. That's the difference. Now, do we have?
Definitely find new people, you're right.
Well, quick show of hands, who's here because they found us on Meetup? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Kind of.
Okay.
And I see this in Fred Log and other places too, that seems to be a very popular place where you go in and look for things. Right?
So-
And they will ping you, hey, you're interested in this, look in this area has something like that.
Another use case like me, I didn't find this place via Meetup because I came before we were on Meetup.
Right.
But I have to admit, I moved to the area and I was in a lug in Pennsylvania. I was like, you know what, where's the local lug? So Google.
Yep.
But I knew I was looking for a lug. Where Peter's point of, hey, there's, in your area, there's this lug. What's a lug? That's interesting. Wow, I wouldn't kind of like that. So it does kind of attract new blood.
So one of the things that I noticed was earlier this year we had a lot of AWS. I saw a lot of new people that I've never seen before because they were interested in AWS and it showed up.
True.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
Certainly for specific talks.
like,
Yeah.
so by putting it on, this is one of the things that I try to make everyone, we want to put the topics on the list sooner than later because that attracts and allows people to find us and say, hey, oh, I want to do that this Saturday instead of doing that. So, and not just put it out in the last moment, which we were very good at for a while. Right. Particularly with Greg, it was like the last moment for a lot of our talks where we got someone confirmed. And it wouldn't allow anyone to find us before we made up with the usual game. But that doesn't mean that this shouldn't be used. I'm just saying we need to figure out exactly how that would help in what areas. There's so many features here. Maybe just a public calendar.
Yeah.
But we try that with the old Novolog.com, right?
It would be, I think, nice to use something like this by us because we're an open source organization. And this kind of says, look, we're going to demonstrate how open source works by using it ourselves.
Eat your own dog food.
Exactly. Yeah, eat your own dog food. That's
Or maybe, to host previous slides, past slides from different presenters.
hosting the slides, yeah, keeping them up there. That's not a bad idea. And links to the videos, or if we can download the videos themselves.
That's on YouTube.
So right now that's YouTube, and you upload all that on Meetup. But yes, to your point, that's not FUS, even though most of that stuff is made by open source.
Yeah, it's driven by open source on the back end.
Yeah.
But all right, so yeah, we'll post about this.
Put it on the mailing list and as a call for action.
Do you want to? Can you do that?
Sure, sure. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Email client, does it have the capability of exporting an email message to a file?
I don't know. Let's find out.
If it's an IMAP, just refresh me.
Well, you can get it from the IMAP server, but can you get it from the email client? you're viewing it on the email client and you want to save it.
That's what I'm saying, if you have it in because your client is IMAP,
Well,
everything that's in there is fetchable.
The email client is an IMAP client. But
I don't see
if
a
you're
way- I don't see a
talking to
way
the
to-
email client, you'd like to be able to use that email client rather than getting a separate email program to connect to the IMAP server.
No, but what you're doing is turning this into a server where you already have a server that has all that truth.
Okay, so looking at this right here, I don't see a download button. You can certainly, copy paste the entire text of something.
Well, no, you
That's-
can't because it doesn't display the entire message.
Right, that's not really quite the same thing. So, no, that's not a feature in here, but again, unified diff.
It's not a tool necessarily for troubleshooting mail headers and things that we all do.
Right, yeah, this isn't really I need to check my mail because I need to know, where is the Novolog meeting? Yeah, I know I've got an email with it, let's find it.
Pop over to your buddy's house, you log in on his computer quick and,
Right,
that's what.
or you're at the public library and you just need to just
But you
log in real
can't,
quick.
doesn't this couple with Thunderbird?
Not specifically.
No? There was some interoperability, because if you could read.
This talks IMAP to your IMAP server. Thunderbird also talks IMAP to the same
Exactly,
IMAP
so
server.
your IMAP server is the truth, and all your clients are just pulling down.
Yeah, so it integrates, not so much integrates with Thunderbird as they both integrate with the same
So
server.
you could read it Thunderbird and save it.
Yeah. But if I'm going to be using Thunderbird when I want to download the messages, then I'm probably going to just use Thunderbird as my
Yeah.
email client period,
Yeah.
and not bother with the email client.
Well, like I said, a lot of times, at least for me, web clients are more of a half step if I don't have a full client handy. I don't.
Being generous.
I don't live my life in a web client, not yet at least. I'm sure I will.
The web clients I've used were all designed by Torquemada.
Like
Well,
the picture.
John, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, John.
So, real quick, is anybody hiring?
You're always hiring, but
Bixel is, BIXAL.
Is anybody looking?
AWS is hiring.
All right.
Yes.
Bixel and AWS.
Yeah, we need some Drupal people, we need some, I don't know if there's any project manager slots open. We've got a lot of PMs, a lot of graphic designers, front-end and back-end web developers. Generally, it's better if you're clearable, but that's not, strictly speaking, a requirement. You have some projects that don't require that.
I could be a project manager, I could complain all about all the work I have to do and not do nothing.
Gotta prefer project managers that have PMPs too.
Yeah.
So did you say if anyone's looking?
Yeah,
Be nice to network, I guess.
sure, oh no.
All right, and we have a good lead on the January speaker. We'll let you know as soon as that's firm. And in February, we have,
well, we know sort of what it's going to be about. If you are anyone who deals with software, I mean not just the end user, but interested in open source, we're going to get something called code.gov in to talk about what the government is doing for open source and how they want to use open source. And
January?
in January. So the exact topics, I don't know for sure yet, but it's going to be multiple speakers from GSA coming in, explaining what they're trying to do and how government is trying to use open source to basically use stuff instead of every agency being their own little thing. Once I get their synopsis, I'll put on Meetup, but I will probably put on a very, very brief one saying it's coming. So.
thanks, and in February, we have AudioPi, which is Raspberry Pi running on Alpine Linux.
So you're really interested.
The Micro Center store in Fairfax is willing to host us for an event. I see that as a win-win, a great place for us to evangelize open source to the public, and of course for them it's a win because it's going to attract technical foot traffic. So it doesn't have to be a monthly meeting, but we can kick that around the mail list. And
Right, so you said.
With that, happy holidays, happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Say good, ho ho. Come on over.
Ho
Oh, and Sid's got some show and tell for 3D printing. We're gonna invite him back. In the next
I saw some notes, people couldn't see it on YouTube, but I did not go on there. I had too much else.
Yeah, I realized I didn't. But it's archived, so.
That's what I thought. And I thought you said last time you were both streaming and recording it, so in case one thing didn't work.
Dan Gomez, first meeting, so.
Welcome to.
It's kind of hard for me to sometimes come out because sometimes I'm on a call basis, and then as the phone rings, I have to immediately get on my laptop. Things like that. So it's kind of weird, so like, should I go or not? So, but do you have that stuff online as far as like the archive?
Nina right now has 3 or 4 years back. There's all the archives elsewhere that I'm not sure how old is the archive. They actually don't know what they're called. Basically, going back 20-some years. Most of the talks after 5 years has been, I will begin going, unless they're about someone's story about what they did. Looking at technology from back then, it may not be too relevant today.
You also access someone.
Most of us in here, we work in IT. Some of us are having the hard problem that we can't find enough skilled people. And in some cases, programmers are being placed on something else. I'm always Red Hat. But the problem is I'm not looking for someone to just manage Xbox. That's not the kind of things we're looking at. More on the pre-sales and in an architect's perspective, which means it's a lot of different things that you so if you're a developer, there's a ton of, for instance, Java, how that works within any infrastructure. Those are the kind of things we've done that.
Yeah, because I'm just starting to get my feet wet. Basically transitioning from communication to system now I'm working with the American Association on how to be administrative and basically it's a member-driven organization. Right now I'm working on a help desk. I'm just trying to see what else is out.
And that's sometimes what we have to do. I've had to you get in and you get a better view from the inside and figure out what to do. You see what your organization can grow. And if not, then you move somewhere else.
Of course.
Yes. John was talking about framework. Yeah, he's looking for developer types out there. We have people there who might be looking for more administrative stuff. So that's why we want to network. First one is looking for architects particular topics.
The sponsor of the group is.
Oh yeah, that was what he was saying up there.
And we'll shoot the link on the meetup as well. Susie,
All right, I just want to get that straightened out.
She's a recruiter too, but she wasn't here. So,
Up there is coming from our sponsor. It's
a pleasure meeting you. Your name again?
There is, I am not in Slack, but I know someone is running the Slack channel. I think it's the Conolog something, yes.
So I guess
You have to be invited for it, you can't just find it.
Yes, but it's also going to be archived.
Like,
Okay, cool. Well, no, I mean, there's a URL you hit.